come here when the weather is nice.
How can we help everyone adopt Bitcoin from a human rights perspective?
That's just an educational question, because human rights activists are not different than anyone else. They are people like you and me. They just have a special job for them, you know, like they have adversaries that we might not have, yeah? So they are doing very difficult and dangerous work. They put themselves at risk, and therefore they need special education on how to stay private, as much as private as possible, when they use Bitcoin and when they use digital technology in general. So I think this is the part that's so important from the work I do, to give some sort of education that shows them, A, how they can use Bitcoin to transact freely without the risk that their bank account, because they don't have a bank account then, is being frozen. And I mean, you know, I was working with human rights activists, and they told me, you know, whenever we receive funds from abroad, the government declares us a terrorist organization and seizes our funds. So we absolutely have problems to get money. And now they understand with Bitcoin they can do that. But they need to be able to do it in a very private way, because no one can take it away from them. That's right. But no one should also know that they use it. And that's a lot of education, basically, because the human rights activists with whom I worked so far, they don't know anything about Bitcoin. That's the sad truth. So, and that's why I say it's the same as with working with the general population, because I'd say, I don't know, 95% of the general population or more don't really know what Bitcoin is. They think it's an investment, speculation and things like that. But that's the other side. Most people don't know that use case, that you can use Bitcoin as a tool for freedom and for your human rights, to enforce your human rights. So I don't think that Bitcoin needs anything added upon other than more privacy protection to enable human rights activists to use it. There doesn't need to be any other, some sort of, I don't know what you meant with implications into the Bitcoin standard, because I don't know what you mean with the Bitcoin standard, to be honest, as well. For me, it would be like I only receive money in Bitcoin, then I'm on the Bitcoin standard. So to answer that question, a final answer, in general, I think human rights activists and civil rights activists will find out in the coming years how much Bitcoin can help them in their work, to support their work for democracy and to enforce human rights. And Bitcoin itself is built that way that it enforces freedom of speech, freedom of association, the right to own property, and all these kinds of things. So we've got a way to go, but I think people will find out sooner or later.
Do you think the Central African Republic's choice over Bitcoin will stop Bitcoin adoption in the country?
No. I don't think it has no influence whatsoever on the people of the Central African Republic. This is one of the poorest countries in the world. And as I followed the news about this legislation, I interpreted what I read online, that this is basically just a move by the president, and there seems to have been some sort of scammer involved, or a guy who is doing his own altcoins and cryptocurrency stuff. And I think this was never really a true legislation like in El Salvador, yeah. And the people of the Central African Republic will not even have realized that Bitcoin was legal tender for 2 months or something. So I don't think that this does anything for anyone. Yeah, it has no meaning at all.
Can you tell us about your experience with people excluded from the financial system discovering Bitcoin for the first time?
So I speak about the people I met on the African continent, so in Zambia, Zimbabwe, South Africa, Ghana. And the first problem is that most people believe that Bitcoin is a scam, because everyone has been scammed or knows someone who has been scammed by Bitcoin or any other cryptocurrency. And people conflate that. They don't know that there's a difference. And it is because people are really in need of money that they fall for these scams, and they also don't know what Bitcoin is. So anyone can come and tell them the story of, give me $50 today, I give you 200 in 3 weeks. And many people believe that, sadly. And so the first thing is always to tell them how it's not a scam and how it's really a technology that they can use. And then a lot of people also are scared to use it because they are following the rules of their authoritarian leaders or something. Because, I mean, if you don't follow the rules, you get into trouble, into big trouble. So if it's not legal tender, or if the government doesn't say, yes, you are allowed to use Bitcoin now, they think it's illegal. And I always say, no, there's no reason why it's illegal. Nobody said it's illegal. You can just use it, but just don't tell anyone. Yeah. And so there's another thing I learned, from some people I talked with who are in the Bitcoin space in Botswana. They told me, many people here also think it's just another technology of the white people, the white men. And we distrust that. We also distrusted the internet. So understandably, there is distrust, yeah? Do people want to get something out of us again? Or how should they know that it's a neutral technology that anyone can use and it won't be to their disadvantage if they use it? I mean, and then one of the biggest things is also often to understand the value of Bitcoin. Who decides on the value of Bitcoin? That's also always very complicated, because the thing that a price on a free market is derived from supply and demand, that doesn't go into the heads of a lot of people. So that's also complicated.
Do they think it's a white man's scam?
No. Yes, might also be, but more they know that it's people from their own countries who do the scams. Okay. So they are not being scammed by white people in that sense. They are scammed by their own people. That's the sad truth. But of course, the people who are better educated and who might see this criticism of the correct criticism of the white people coming and exploiting everything, which is still true, they then also suspect maybe this is also white technology. And that's why it's so good that we have B-Trust builders and initiatives on the ground who also educate and help developers from the African continent to learn to build their own solutions and things like that. And yesterday, Kogatsu was here from Machankura, and Abubuka from Nigeria. All these people who are spreading the word about it with their own peers, and not just me coming there as a white person telling them what to do, I'm very humble on that. I go there to learn and to share what I can share to help. If people want it, it's good. If don't, I go,
How do you overcome the barrier of being an outsider that came to educate?
Yeah, it's very difficult. Do you say that? Yeah, difficult. No, not difficult. What I mean, it has different shades in a way, because on the one hand, yes, you have the people who say, white people, what do you want here? But then you still have a lot of people, and that's also a sad truth, that believe me as a white person more than their peers. I guess that's from their school and from the colonialists, the history. And I think that's sad, but yeah, I can't help that. So I build trust in conversations. I mean, many people are very open. A lot of people are also in the other way around. They're very grateful for me coming. They say, thank you so much that you're coming and you're sharing that education with us. So it's a mixed bag. You have everything.
What's your strategy for the future? Are you planning to create a platform?
if you're talking about how, or if I'm giving them a platform, that's exactly what I did. When I started my podcast I think in 2019, I had the first people from the African continent on, because that's a goal from me, to build the bridge between us and them. Let's say it that way, yeah. And when I started in 2019, I had a handful of people, you know, who were referred to me, and I thought, is there no one else? And now it has been, it's so much more, so many more people. You know, for instance, the sister of Mary Imasuen, I don't know her name at the moment. She's a developer. She developed a tool where you can stream sats in a live stream. So there are many more people already working on it on the ground. And I mean, this kind of adoption takes time. And so I'm very optimistic, because we have these people now. Maybe it's only 50, but next year it's 150. I know it. I mean, I've seen it also at Afro Bitcoin last year in December at the first event, Afro Bitcoin conference in Ghana. There were so many people, and I'm sure that this year there will be even more initiatives out of the African countries who adopt Bitcoin, who will build communities and education around that. And that's also why I started my Crack the Orange program, which is a platform for aspiring Bitcoin educators and community builders in countries where they maybe can't afford education. And so there's a scholarship program where those people can apply and then get a scholarship for a 1-year Bitcoin course, where I'm available once a month, and we speak about, we install wallets and things of that, like that, because I believe it needs people on the ground who share the knowledge about Bitcoin with their peers. And that's what I'm trying to do.
What moves you to do this?
Well, I mean, it has a lot to do with my identity, what I am, who I am, how I grew up. And I always was adventurous, you know. I think life is short. I want to make the most of it. And I had a time like 2015, 16. Or let me start in a different way. I always knew I wanted to be self-employed. I always knew I wanted to do something. I also was a pioneer, you know. When I started with my online platforms and things, web development, we developed a platform in Austria like Etsy, but no one knew about that. Or we had a co-working space platform where no one in Vienna knew what a co-working space is. So I was always a little bit ahead of time. And so I also wanted to be a nomad in a way always, you know, like living during the European summer, being somewhere where it's warm and being able to work there as an entrepreneur. And with Bitcoin, everything came together. Also my human rights view in a way, because I mean, as a lesbian, you know, I was discriminated by law the first 30 or 35 years of my life in Austria. And I cannot really imagine how bad life must be for gay, queer people, for instance, in Uganda, where you have now the death penalty. Yeah. And that's, I think, where the fire is coming from, why I want to support people, to live a better life and have the possibility at least to have, functioning money where they can save, they can build resistance on top of it and plan their future. And I think that's the reason. And also this disparity between, Western countries or the rich countries and African countries, or also South American, whatever, yeah, where we as Europeans went to colonialize, and everyone actually. I don't know. I think Bitcoin gives people in these countries the opportunity to make this wealth gap smaller. And that's why I'm doing so much, I think, because I think now is the time to start using Bitcoin, not in 10 years or in 20 years. I mean, still a great tool, but if we want to make this wealth gap slower, then yeah, it's now.
What is it like to be a woman in a predominantly male context?
I suffer the same like you. I don't combat it. I'm angry, and I was very much more angry in the early years. I'm not that angry anymore. I have to accept it. You have to work around it. It's sad. I'm talking to other women in the space and they say the same. You're not visible as a woman. And people think, I assume maybe, I don't know why if it's true, but I think a lot of people don't know how much I know actually, technically about the protocol, because they don't think that I know it. And it might be the same for you, you know, they see you as the podcaster or the assistant or I don't know what. That's not only in the Bitcoin space, as you said. I mean, Bitcoin is a technology made of tech, internet, networking, whatever, finance, law, mathematics, all things where you have the guys. And many women are like, that's not for me. Which is sad because it's not true, but it's also so hard. So, and that's why it's important that there are women like you and me and the others we already have, a lot of them, to be a role model so that other women can see, oh, actually, I could be a Bitcoin educator. I can be a developer. I can be all these kinds of things. And I think that's also one of my goals that has been since the beginning I've been in Bitcoin. There was no woman like maybe Elizabeth Stark at the time and others. Yeah, of course. But I thought there need to be more. And that's also where I take the courage to speak out because someone has to do it.
Why a woman should join the community?
Absolutely. I think it's especially for all kinds of groups who are disadvantaged and especially also women. Yeah. I mean, everyone knows, or I guess everyone knows that many women live a very oppressed life in other countries and everywhere. But with Bitcoin, for instance, you can have your own money. Your husband doesn't need to know. Your partner doesn't need to know. Yeah. And this is very empowering, I think. And I heard a statistic, I don't know if it's true or not. It seems that 4 times more Indian women hold Bitcoin than men. And I don't know if it's true, but I could imagine because there's a long tradition in Indian households or in India that women have a lot of gold. And so from that perspective, maybe it's true. And I think especially Bitcoin is a good place to start for women because there's also still this disparity and we need more women and more a diverse set of people coming from all countries to build really solutions that are scalable, resilient for the future. So please start working, doing something with Bitcoin, learning about it or whatever.
If there is one question you could ask Satoshi, what would it be?
Who supported his work if it was one person and if it was one guy?
Did you have the opportunity to buy something with Bitcoin in Lugano?
Yes, I bought 2 coffees 2 days ago.
How was the experience?
Great. I mean, it worked fast and it was fine.
What other cities can learn from the Lugano Plan B experience?
I think if you enable people to spend Bitcoin and Lightning in your country or in your town, you will get a lot of travelers coming in and also new businesses. So I think it's a good idea to do that now.
If you have to convince someone to go to Lugano, what will you tell them?
Come here when the weather is nice. We were not lucky today, these days. Yeah, it's a beautiful place, I guess, and you can spend some Bitcoin and ride a boat.